Hello, fifth graders. It's Mr. James again, coming to you from my backyard. We are going to be doing lesson 3. This should be week 4, day 3 of your reading. And we're going to continue reading Beyond the Horizon. So, well, let's go ahead and get started. Our enduring understanding is that readers understand that comparing and contrasting texts helps them build awareness of similar themes and topics. Hopefully, the people doing their yard work around us aren't too loud. And our essential question is, how do readers quote accurately from a text when comparing and contrasting themes and topics? Today's objective is I can identify a perspective on events. So, as we're looking at the events of the text today, we're going to look specifically at the perspective of each of the characters, how the characters feel about the events, how the events are perceived by that individual. Because different people have different perspectives on different events. Some person in the text may view an event as positive, and the other person may view it as negative. It all depends on your perspective. So we'll read pages 22 through 31, looking specifically at that idea of perspective. Please make sure you have your text. I'm getting mine out right now so that you can follow along as we read.
Chapter 2. The trade's increase sailed down the inlet from the sea toward the city of Surat, steering clear of the mangroves that threatened to block its way. Captain Booth gave orders for the ship to berth at one of the wharfs jutting out into the water. Alongside drifted the Adventurer, limping into the docks. There were other ships out in the harbor, all flying different colors, though none carried more guns than the trade's increase. Farther down the channel stood a fort, appearing to rise out of the water itself, with tall, rounded towers at its corners. Flags of dark green rippled in the breeze on top of tall turrets. Clustered at each side were a straggle of wooden houses stacked side by side. They reminded Sarah of the crates in the hold. Beyond the city, dry plains stretched out into the distance, flickering in the heat. "That's the Mughal Emperor's," said Cook, nodding at the fort, "though his real palace is far from here." Sarah gazed at the fort. "It's magical." "If you say so," said Cook. The trade's increase didn't have much in the way of goods to unload, just some cases of unwrought metal and some wool, which Captain Booth intended to trade for fresh provisions. It was on the journey back that the hold would be packed to the gunwales. "Once we have unloaded our freight, see that the men are paid some of what they are due and give them leave," Captain Booth told the first mate. "Set the curfew for 7 bells and have Cook and that boy of his seek out some good fare for our table tonight. Something fresh." Sarah and Cook walked the short street that ran alongside the docks, customers and stalls blocking their path at every turn, while dark-eyed cows wandered freely as if the street were their own. There were barrows with neatly stacked pyramids of fruits and vegetables, purple, orange, and yellow, like a sunset. In one barrow there were pale green strings, in another, bright red fingers. Sarah couldn't put a name to any of them. Spice traders with white turbans coiled around their heads called out, their piles of bright powder pungent in the heat. Cook chose some fresh ginger, some little dark cloves, and a stick of sandalwood. "This will turn the captain's stew a lovely color," he remarked. Cook began haggling with the trader. "They'll have the clothes off your back if you let them, these locals," he muttered, wandering off to find a butcher. Sarah felt something rub up against her leg. She flinched, thinking it was a rat, but it was the ship's cat, upright and proud. "Tom!" Sarah gasped. "Whatever are you doing here?" she asked, scooping him up. "Naughty cat," she reprimanded. Sarah scanned the crowd for Cook to let him know she was going to take Tom back to the ship. At that moment, Tom sank his back claws into Sarah's arm and wriggled free, dropping to his feet. In a trice he was gone, weaving through the legs of people passing by and dashing down a side street. Sarah ran after him, her eyes fixed on the cat's tail. Tom fled through the muddle of streets, Sarah close behind, the buildings looming over them like cliffs. "Tom!" Sarah yelled as she ran, her boots dusty, her shirt soaked through. Ahead, a mud wall blocked the end of the passageway. Sarah slowed down and allowed herself a smile. The chase ended here. "Tom!" she called once again to the fleeing cat, bending down low in an attempt to gain his attention. Tom paused for a moment to give his flight a second thought. Wasn't she his companion who had fed him on board the ship? Then, with an unkind glance and a flash of his tail, he leaped up onto the wall and vanished again. Sarah ran to the wall, fingers scrabbling at the baked earth as if to scale it herself, but it was hopeless. There was no way she was getting Tom back to the ship now. It was then that it hit her. She had run blindly, and she had absolutely no idea where she was. Sarah stumbled back down the passageway, turning this way and that, through the tangle of lanes as best she remembered. Chasing Tom was making it hard for her to breathe. At last, she came across another person, an old woman sitting on the ground, sifting beans in a wicker basket. The woman glanced up at the strange Angres boy, her face blank. Sarah didn't remember passing her on the way into the maze of streets and lanes. "The docks? Ships?" Sarah pointed down the passageway. "Ships?" "Jiha," said the woman, waggling her head and breaking into a smile. "Bajar, bajar." With her hand she showed Sarah to turn left and then right. "Much obliged," Sarah gasped, relieved. Now she thought she could hear the sounds of the busy docks twisting their way through the winding passages. Sarah picked up the pace once more, finally reaching the end of the alley. She turned left the way the old woman had said. She would be back on board the ship in no time. As for Tom, well, there were probably plenty of rats here to keep him busy. As Sarah burst out of the gloom and into the light of the busy main street, she realized this wasn't the dock. It was a different part of the city, a different market altogether. The heaving thoroughfare stretched for miles, a jumble of merchants and customers, of men in loincloths with baskets above their heads, and bullock carts and barrows. There was endless confusion in every direction, and not a ship in sight, just a pulsing mass of people and animals. And above it all, 1,000 voices crying out, shouting, haggling, and not a word did she understand. The fear took hold of Sarah once again, and this time she could not fight it. Panicked, Sarah hurriedly chose a direction and pushed her way through the crowd, forcing her way along the thoroughfare. Expressionless faces stared at her. She spotted a man pulling a handcart down a street, branching off the main road. The cart was laden with crates, the sort she'd seen on the docks. Sarah ran after him. It was then that the cart flew into her, and the hub of a spinning wheel smacked against her head. Everything turned black.
All right, so it looks like Sarah was knocked unconscious in an unfamiliar area in India. We'll have to see what happens next. Maybe you have a guess or prediction. We'll get to find out next time we read. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a great rest of your